It seems like this sort of executive hyperreach is becoming the norm. It's like flying under the radar. Mondays with Mike.
Mondays with Mike. Mondays with Mike.
Okay, next story will be judge rules that construction may not continue on the East Wing without congressional approval. This was Judge Richard Leon, and he said that Trump couldn't continue his project to build out the East Wing, to essentially build a new East Wing. But in effect, that would then mean no East Wing because he already demolished the old one. Or did he demolish part of it? Either way. Okay, so part of the judge's ruling was that the construction could continue insofar as to not leave an unsafe, incomplete construction site. But Trump then said, the whole thing is about safety, so I guess that means I can continue. Those weren't his words, but according to NBC's reporting on the last week of March, first week of April, that was the gist of it. Trump also mentioned that the military is building a big complex under the new ballroom. This could just be me reading, between the lines too much, but could this imply that Trump just seems okay with not complying with the spirit of the judicial order? And what did the judge actually rule?
So my understanding is it's pretty much what you said, that the ruling is that it looks like there's a case that can be made that Trump can't just do this without congressional approval. And so essentially it's an injunction, right? So they're saying it's a stop order. They're saying you can't continue without approval from Congress, that the president is essentially a tenant, but that the American people own the building, right? And say you were renting a property from a landlord and you decided to remodel the bathroom or something. You couldn't do it, but essentially that's what's happening right now, is that Trump demolished part of the building and is building something else there, right? But he doesn't own it. It's not his. And to be more closely related to who actually owns it, that would be Congress, because they decide, as the elected representatives of the American people, how to spend money and how to deal with property that the U.S. government owns. In that respect, I think that there's something there in terms of what the judge is saying, that Congress needs to actually approve of this happening, because ultimately they're the ones that decide what happens with property, and they oversee the Capitol, and the White House is part of the Capitol, right? It's part of D.C. So it seems pretty straightforward there. If the CEO of, I was thinking of an analogy, if the CEO of a company decided that they wanted to remodel the headquarters of the company without any request to the board or the shareholders or something. I want to spend all this money and these resources to do something, so I'm just going to do it. And it doesn't work that way for something like this, because there's more than just one stakeholder involved. That's the whole issue. It's the American people themselves that are involved in this decision, and so they should have a say. But I do think that, Trump's pretty much not ignoring the order, but he's interpreting it in a way that says that he can keep going, and he could just claim that, for safety reasons, you just have to keep doing it. Essentially, he'll just keep going until it actually is required to stop. My understanding it was a 14-day injunction, but there was that exception made to keep working for safety and security reasons. That one's open to a bit of interpretation, right? And I guess theoretically, Trump could just keep having the work done, and when they reach the end of the 14-day period, say we still got to keep doing it because of safety and security reasons, right? Work's not done. There's a big hole in the ground. Just got to keep working on this. Got to keep making it safer. And the state of being safe is something that's open to some degree of interpretation.
Yeah. It reminds me of, with the Epstein files, how they were to be released on a particular date. then when that date comes, we can't release those. We haven't sufficiently redacted things in order to protect the victims. Okay, but the law says that is what was supposed to happen. So you're not, so in as much as that is true, you're not complying with the law. It strikes me that this is a pattern. And I wrote down, it seems like this sort of executive hyperreach is becoming the norm. I just wonder if it spells disaster for our constitutional system. But I also perceive that it's like flying under the radar, because the zone is being flooded, by which is meant the news it's not even sensationalism. It's literally so much going on that you legitimately should pay attention to, that the finite attention resource, the finite resource of attention of the average involved person is overtaxed. And so I perceive that this potential crisis of executive hyperreach is flying under the radar. And I think, how could it be explained to the average person if it's so successfully being masked? So that is in the vein that I wrote, if you had to explain this in one sentence to someone who doesn't follow politics, what would you tell them? It wouldn't actually have to be one sentence, but the idea, you get the gist. You get the gist. This big pattern is happening. It's going unnoticed. I'm waving my arms here. Go.
It is. So the answer there is that the U.S. electorate is the employer of Trump. He was hired to do a job. It's a temporary job for an amount of time. He's not a king. And so that means that the oversight is left to people who are very good at looking at the large amounts of data and condensing it down into something palatable and manageable. And that's where Congress comes in, right? So the election is very important in November because Congress does have tools at its disposal that the average person does not. They've got the largest research library in the world. They have access to the Congressional Budget Office and the GAO, the Government Accountability Office, I think is what it's called, where they can task people quite seriously. Congress, almost any congressperson really, can ask these groups to find out an answer to a question, and then they will wield their considerable resources to do that, because Congress is the entity that has a truth-seeking role in U.S. government, as in they provide the oversight to ensure that things aren't going haywire. That's where you get things like that hearing with Kristi Noem, where there was heavy scrutiny on those contracts that were being created for the warehouses and for that ad campaign, where they're asking very serious questions. Did Trump approve this? How did this come to be? All those things. And look, Kristi Noem got fired. The role of Congress is actually very important at putting a sort of magnifying glass on these things. So to simplify it as much as I can, we employ the president to do a job. And so that means that our elected representatives are the ones that have to audit if the job is being done well.
Okay.
That's the simple sentence there. We hire the auditors.
Yeah, so you would connect it to the deferentiality of Congress, because Trump has done a lot of things via executive fiat, a lot of which one can do a lot with the executive, but as much as he has been doing, probably not all of it.
Yeah, so just think of it this way. Congress has the ability to override veto. So the Epstein files example is actually relevant for this discussion. Remember, initially Trump did not want this stuff to be released to the public, that he used a lot of political capital and quite a few tools available at his disposal to try and delay and to obfuscate and to essentially hide what was in these files, right? Like he did not want the files to be released in any capacity, certainly not in the way that they were. But then Congress overwhelmingly voted for the release, not in some like abstract, oh, this was like a on party lines vote. No, every member of Congress but one voted for these files to be released. All of the Senate, everybody in the House except for one person, one,
Yeah.
Congress said this has to happen, this will happen. Where the executive has some latitude is in the actual implementation of it. And that's where we're seeing now and have been seeing, as you mentioned, since the deadline came and went, where effectively the incompetence is the strategy. Oh, you gave us a job to do, but we just can't quite do it. It's not like they don't have the ability to hire more people. Of course they do. They can hire as many people as they want. There's the federal government. If they
He
wanted
could
to
hire
hire
2 million people tomorrow if he wanted, he
absolutely.
says.
If they really wanted
Yeah.
to, are you kidding me? If they really wanted to, they could hire 10 million people whose only job is to just sit and look at these documents letter by letter until you get them the best and absolute perfect outcome. Clearly, that
Mhm.
didn't happen. So, in that respect, the incompetence was part of the strategy to hide the information in the files by limiting the release in the way they did and by not releasing it all at once. And then also saying, oh, there's duplicates and there's redactions that we can't really blah, blah, blah. No, they have the power to unredact everything. They have oversight capacity of everything. Like there were choices that were made there. But as we've seen, Congress has played a very important role in calling out those practices and questioning very seriously what is going on. Congress plays a very important role in oversight and auditing these things that happen. And so that's why the elections matter so much in November, is that if you want to rein in the worst practices and impulses, you essentially need somebody who can't be fired by the president to just sit there and look at the truth unvarnished, as it were, to get a magnifying glass and to sift through huge amounts of data and find out what's actually going on. And that's where Congress plays that role. Because the president, for all his power, cannot fire members of Congress.
In an article titled Trump Calls Dems Video to Service Members Seditious Behavior Punishable by Death, dated November 20, 2025, ABC News reported President Donald Trump on Thursday called several Democratic veterans and national security specialists traitors who should face the death penalty for releasing a joint video where they said that U.S. service members could refuse illegal orders, a move that has prompted some lawmakers to call the president's rhetoric dangerous and a threat. Trump wrote on social media in connection with this story, "This is really bad and dangerous to our country. Their words cannot be allowed to stand. Seditious behavior from traitors. Lock them up?" Question mark. Trump also reshared a social media post responding to the Washington Examiner's article about the Democrats, calling for them to be hanged. In another post, the president said, "Seditious behavior, punishable by death." In this recording of the podcast, Mike said that Trump intended other prosecutions as well.
So, what has he done to try and rein in Congress, anyways? He tried to get those people who told the military that they don't need to obey illegal orders. He tried to get them all arrested and thrown in jail, right? That was the most recent attempt. The senators and the Congress people who made that video, they actually tried to charge them with a crime. The grand jury returned a no bill, right? So that means they said there's no probable cause to arrest these people who said that it's illegal. They essentially just reiterated what the law is, right? The law is that members of the military, this is out of Nuremberg, right? I was just following orders. It's not a valid excuse for committing war crimes and crimes against humanity. That there is a responsibility on the part of soldiers themselves to not engage in war crimes. That was what they were reiterating from the U.S. military war manual, essentially that soldiers can in fact disobey an illegal order, an order that tells them to commit a crime against somebody that doesn't fall within the laws of war. And so Trump, because he can't fire those members of Congress or senators from their jobs, went the other route, which was within his power. He tried to prosecute them. Well, didn't work. So that's where Congress plays a really important role to check the executive, is because also the judiciary, let's be frank, that you want to have judges who have a backbone and who actually interpret the law as it's written. And that's super important. And so those are the kinds of things where elections really matter, is because for the judiciary in particular, Congress is the one that does the oversight on people who become judges. The Senate, especially, they're the ones who vote on all those judicial nominees, right? So if you have a Senate that's actually doing their job, you hopefully are able to stave off some of the worst nominees, like the most unqualified nominees, like people who don't even have any experience with the law or who are like blatantly in the pocket of various interests. You don't want them in the judiciary, right? You want actual people who will do the job.
So the sentence, which can use a good deal of refining, could be something like, the job of a congressperson is to investigate and hold to account, not just to get a free pension. Because, of course, they're doing lots of other things. They're not really getting a free pension. But it's also true that it's not to get a free pension. And that'll just tickle the brain in a certain way that'll, like, what, they're getting a free pension? And then somebody would look into it and it's, oh, they haven't been checking the actions when those actions contravene the law.
Yeah. So do you remember the show Law and Order, where they have that sort of opening?
Yeah. In the criminal justice system, etc. Yeah.
So in the U.S. political justice system, the people are represented by two separate, yet actually three separate, but very important groups. The president.
Two separate elected branches.
Yes. So the ones that are elected, that they're represented by, are the Congress and the president.
The Congress who makes the law, and the president who needs to follow the law.
The Congress who makes the law and prosecutes the executive. They're the ones who have the power to actually investigate from the executive branch and actually prosecute. They are the ones with the tools, if you really think about it, because they're the court system for the government itself. That's what impeachment is, that you can charge the people in power with like actual crimes and then prosecute them through Congress. That's their role in part. And so that's what I think of when I think of what is the role of government in terms of who we're voting for. That's part of it. It's that Congress is the one that is the investigative branch. They investigate things. They find answers to questions. That is their job. They're like the academics of the political world. If you look at what the largest research library in the world is, it's the Library of Congress. It's huge. It's a gigantic library. They've got access to a huge amount of resources at their disposal to figure out what's actually going on. And it's super important, actually, that members of Congress know what the reality is, because a lot of politics is the sort of back and forth finessing of the truth. Oh, everything's peachy. Everything's great. It's so wonderful. I'm going to make you so rich and so happy and so successful. Congress actually sees what the numbers are on the ground in terms of things like poverty, homelessness, the price of everything. Like, they have real tools at their disposal to figure out what's really going on. And then you would expect behind closed doors, if the situation gets really out of hand in a working Congress, they would come up with solutions that actually address those problems. That the theater will actually stop at some point and compromises will be made. And we're seeing that right now with this DHS funding fight, that the numbers got really bad for those lines and for the TSA agents quitting. Look, part of the reason that I think there was this resolution that happened just recently on the funding fight is they had a hearing with the TSA administrator or whatever, where essentially the person broke it down to Congress. This is what's going on, right? We're having real problems with retention, of keeping people on the job that you have to train for. You have to invest time and energy and resources to train TSA agents. And if they quit in droves, or they don't show up in droves by calling out sick, or if they decide not to get hired for future potential TSA problems, it's not like the airports are going away, right? The airports are there. And we require by law that people have to go through security checks to get on a plane, right? So the problem isn't going away, right? We're just making it worse by not paying TSA agents. And so I think Congress, when presented with that sort of reality, broke through, because only a few days later, after that hearing, that specific hearing where it's like, this is really bad and getting really worse, you saw movement. You saw the Senate unanimously pass that funding agreement. You saw the House. Initially, Mike Johnson was like, no, not going to hear it. But then recently there was that, he said, yeah, we're going to do the Senate agreement. Now what they have to do is vote on it. And that's an issue, is that Congress is still in recess. And
Oh man, when are they not in recess? They get more recesses than third graders.
if you want a job, work as a member, run for office in Congress, because they work like not a third of the year, but they do not work 24/7, 365 a year. No way. They get a huge amount of time off. They get vacation time. They get time to go and campaign and to go back to their districts or whatever. But they get a lot of time off if you look at the actual calendar. And also for political reasons, Mike Johnson kept them not working for, was it 2 or 3 months? Because he didn't want to seat that representative from New Mexico. So it's okay. We're not gonna swear her in if we're not in session. So we're just not gonna be in session for months and months.
Yeah.
I was like, okay. But yeah, those are the kinds of games that are played in politics. But then when reality actually confronts them in the face, and this is going to get really bad. It's bad now, but it's going to get really bad. Do something. They're slowly moving towards doing something more than nothing. But I think part of it was Trump was playing games too, that he wanted the SAVE Act passed. He was trying to hold some kind of leverage, all that stuff. And it's no, we're not going to disenfranchise millions of people just so you can remember talking about hostage taking with reference to Iran and them trying to enact a toll. This is the same kind of thing in the US with politics, that they're essentially trying to use maximum leverage to accomplish political things. No, just pay people you hire, pay them in full, whatever you promise that they're going to be paid.
Tiger Woods was arrested on March 27th, 2026, following a rollover crash near his home in Jupiter Island, Florida, where he was said to have shown signs of impairment. Police reported that Woods failed a field sobriety test and later refused a urine test, though a breathalyzer indicated no alcohol was in his system. The incident, which involved a rolled over vehicle, has reignited concerns about his health and cast a shadow over the golf world just ahead of the Masters tournament in April.
It's not that complicated for Tiger Woods, right? He got arrested. He got charged with 3 different crimes: damaging property, DUI, and refusing to take I think it was a urine test. And they're all misdemeanors as far as I can tell, charges. So when you're asking, is he getting like a special kind of treatment or anything like that? Yeah, in some respects, if it was a misdemeanor charge instead of a felony charge, because he's already got a criminal history. He's already got a criminal record for reckless driving. So usually when we're talking about criminal cases and proceedings, especially in that part of the world of the US, usually there's a system where you get a harsher sentence or a harsher charge if you've got a criminal record, right? Okay, if for first time offender, there's some leniency, right? For a second time offender or a third time offender, right, there's usually harsher charges and sentences. In that respect, yes, there's some degree of leniency there.
Yeah, and that sort of led into one of the questions that I was going to ask, because you would think that upon being a repeat offender, because his car was involved in, what was it prior? Was it a rollover crash?
Yeah, he got charged with reckless driving and pled guilty to it. He had to do a bunch of probation and community service. He pled guilty to a crime in the past.
So, so one good thing was that he did test 0.00 blood alcohol content, so he must have done a breathalyzer, because he refused the urinalysis. Now, refusing a urinalysis test is a, I don't know, misdemeanor, but some kind of crime in Florida.
It's essentially you're obstructing an investigation, so that's what that is. But no, the reason for why it's important is that if he was impaired from the painkillers, that wouldn't necessarily show up in a blood alcohol test, but it would probably show up in like a drug test, right? And it's usually illegal to drive while under the influence of opioids, right?
Yeah, definitely. And the and he doesn't, I don't know who takes illegal drugs.
Even if it was a legal drug, right, you're still not allowed to drive impaired under the influence of something that might impair your ability to process things. The question is whether he took more than the prescribed amount, for instance, of the painkiller, such that it made his ability to interpret the world reduced. So a parallel I think of is marijuana in Washington State. It's legal to buy marijuana and consume marijuana in Washington. It's not legal to drive while impaired from marijuana. So it's that same kind of thing. Like if somebody's prescribed medication and they're driving still under the influence of something that impairs their ability to drive, how there's that warning, don't operate heavy machinery when you take certain medication or something like that. Same kind of thing here. If he's driving while impaired, which is the allegation, my understanding is it's still, I'm not a lawyer, but my understanding is that it's still the law that you can't drive around without understanding fully what you're saying and hearing.
Yeah, but so it would seem that he would have known, he, and he alone, really, would have known what he had taken recently.
Yeah, and if he had those pain pills on him, right? The question is, did he intend to take more while he was trying? Like, why have them on you if not to take them when you need them? Those are the questions.
Yeah. And I would presume he would be wealthy enough to have a driver. He doesn't need to...
Absolutely. Yeah. This is one of those things that perplexes me. If you're rich and you can afford to have someone drive you around, why aren't you?
Do it. Yeah. Employ the driver. Give yourself the free time. Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't you? And so that always is a question. For a situation like this, where he's got a history of reckless driving and clearly an inability to like not restrain himself from driving when impaired sometimes, hire somebody to drive you. Get an Uber. Take a taxi. Dude, at some point, don't drive. If you pose a danger to yourself and others, stop posing the danger. Get a driver.
Yeah.
If you can afford it, do it. Is he really that hard up for cash? That's what I'm wondering. Does he just have no money anymore?
He should give some golf lessons if he doesn't have any money. I'll tell you what, if I was a single-digit millionaire, I'd get a driver. And that might be a little wasteful.
I would too.
And I love driving.
I hate driving, so it's not even a difficult question for me. I would not, if I could afford it, I would not drive. Like, what?
Precisely, yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, that's one of those perplexing things for Tiger Woods. It's like, why do you keep digging yourself into these completely avoidable situations? You don't. Okay, so Justin Timberlake actually is another example. It's like, why are you driving drunk when you're rich enough to afford a driver?
Yeah, don't drive drunk, folks. This is just the Mondays with Mike podcast is firmly on the side of not driving drunk. Support your local Uber or Lyft driver. Don't drive drunk.
Driver. Don't drive while under the influence of drugs or alcohol.
That's right, because cars are deadly weapons, and if they're a deadly weapon, it's like a drunk person shooting off pistols in the air. No thanks.
Don't do it. It's for the safety of yourself and others. Be safe. It doesn't cost that much. The cost of a driver compared to the cost of like lawsuits and jail time and all the reputational harm, there's no question. Just hire a driver. This was completely avoidable. I think celebrities are given a lot of, not free passes, but they're given some degree of latitude and flexibility sometimes in situations like this. Society would be well served in figuring out ways to mitigate those harms, like requiring him, for instance, to go. And look, there's ways to make people not drive impaired for alcohol, like a breathalyzer test where you have to blow into a breathalyzer to even start your car. I think that there should be some effort made to create a technology where people have to demonstrate they're not under the influence of drugs when driving. I just don't know that there's an easy way to do that. But if somebody could invent that, that would be just great, right? Because cars do pose a real danger for pedestrians, but also people who are driving and other people in cars. It would be good to have a way to limit that danger to society before accidents happen. Because usually we deal with things after they happen, but the consequences can be so severe that it would be great if we invested in figuring out a way to stave off these kinds of situations in general, right?
For sure.
Yeah. And part of it too has to do with if people with wealth and power are unwilling or unable to correct their own actions in these kinds of situations, that's where society has to step in and come up with solutions that remove that choice from them. So if somebody has proven that they are a reckless driver or that they engage in reckless behavior, but we still want to allow them to drive cars, then you have to come up with a solution that doesn't involve giving them the choice not to comply, if that makes sense.
It sure does.
Yeah. Okay. So that's my thought there. So there's work to be done.
Okay, so finally, Artemis. Return to the moon. This is great. So the U.S. is going to return to the moon with a manned landing with Artemis 3. And the idea is that this will be a stepping stone to Mars. The current mission, Artemis 2, is a crewed flyby of the moon. Crewed, C-R-E-W-E-D, not crude. A crewed flyby. The cool part, from my perspective, is that whereas Apollo orbited Earth several times in order to fling itself off, they orbited once, burned their engines as they were leaving Earth's orbit, and that should be already them on a return trajectory by looping around the moon and hitting Earth again in a little over a week at the appropriate angles so that it's a good re-entry. They must also have more fuel in case they've miscalculated or whatever, because that's how you do redundancy. Oh boy. So they are going to be pulled by the moon's gravity and flung back in Earth's direction, whence Earth's gravity takes over. They'll be about as far away from Earth as was the crew of Apollo 13, which is the human distance record from Earth, so they may break it. They are the first humans to leave Earth's orbit since 1972, so over 50 years. And again, this is Artemis 2. Artemis 3 will land people on the moon. It took us from Apollo 1 to Apollo 11 to actually get people on the moon. And this is just 3 steps. And it makes sense because we've had 50 years to study the moon, flights to the moon, 50 years better technology. We've had a space program the whole time. This is great. This is great for science. This is great for eventual future space travel. I'm happy that this is something that the parties and everybody seem to agree is great. What do you think of all this?
Oh, I think it's excellent. The more space exploration, the better, mainly because it presents options to humanity that don't involve being stuck on a planet. So the whole issue here, from my perspective, is that Earth is undergoing a pretty serious transition due to climate change, and the more options we have to try and mitigate that, the better. Space provides the answers. There's ways to get stuff from space to Earth that could help to alleviate some of the problems we're facing. So, giant comets full of ice, for instance, or from the asteroid belt, with resources that we could use to help improve everything. All of the scarcity on Earth is an artificial scarcity. It's only because we're limited right now with the technologies we have for our ability to actually utilize the resources that are out there in the universe. This is the way to help improve the lives of everyone, period. And the US is at the front of it because we have the resources to do it, but we're leading the way. We're not the only ones that are doing this. And if we can prove that it can be done, then it creates a greater incentive for everybody else to get on board with improving the science and the technology and to do more exploration and to understand what is really going on out in the universe. This is also important for another reason, and it has to do with the issues with extraterrestrials and aliens and unidentified aerial phenomena. If any of that's true, that there are intelligent species out there with technologies that are as good or much better than what we have, then we have to catch up if we want to have any chance. Say there is an adversary out there in the universe that has technology that's better than us, we have to be able to, one, understand it, and two, survive it. And so the only way to do that is to keep doing stuff like this, is to do missions to space, to do manned missions to space, to do the science and the technology and the research to understand what is out there and how we can endure it. And this is all important. It's important for a variety of reasons. One of them is to figure out how to survive in deep space without any planets around. And the other is to figure out how to get onto another planetary body to live there, right? If people don't want to live here, we should be able to provide them an option to live somewhere else, right? Because one of the issues with Earth is that there's overpopulation. We've got too many people and not enough resources of what's available spread equally because there's a huge unequal distribution of resources on the planet. Some countries have a lot of power and they leave the scraps for everyone else. If space exploration can provide for people to have a better quality of life or a better opportunity at life than what they're given now on Earth with terms of limits to food and water and access to jobs and income producing endeavors to make them survive in the world. I'm all for providing that option for anybody who wants it. That if we can get there, look, one of the issues in the United States right now is illegal immigration. If there was a way to provide a safe, healthy future for people that want it out in space, I'm all for creating the technologies to do that. If that helps to ameliorate the situation for everyone else, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Life is extremely unfair for some people on Earth, and it's just the genetic lottery. If you're born in one part of the world through no choice of your own, really, life can be nasty, brutal, short. Some people are born into essentially what amounts to an open air prison. They can't leave and they're given no opportunity where they live. That their food, their water, their electricity are all controlled from external sources, and there's no meaningful opportunity to survive and thrive in the world. If this provides an escape from that, I think it's all to the good. That it's something to aspire towards to improve the situation for everyone. And here's the thing about space. These divisions that exist on Earth can't really exist as much on a spaceship because you're all in it together. You're all stuck on a ship where the resources are heavily controlled and there's no like division of labor where one person owns the ship and everybody else just gets to like suffer under that over whoever owns the ship. Everybody on a ship has to work together to survive. At least how it works now. There may be a point in the future where that changes, but right now, like ships are very equitable kind of thing. There's no like minimum wage of ship. You either work to keep the ship running or everybody runs out of water or air or food. So in that respect, I think that space technology and advancement is great. It is a shame that going forward, it doesn't look like NASA is going to be as involved with some space technologies, which means that there's going to be much more commercial control from private industry over space. NASA is not the only space program in the world. There are other space programs from countries that are developing or developed that have different values and motivations. And they too can engage in space exploration. And the main benefit of science, the really great benefit of science, is that the information that is learned from science isn't contained to just one country. That as the research expands and grows, it builds on all the things that are learned from everyone else, right? And so this may be one piece of the puzzle, but it is an important piece. And I'm glad that it's happening. And I'm glad that it's happening in the way that it is. It's a shame it took so long, right? We already went to the moon 50 years ago. But hey, better late than never. Here we are.
Definitely. Yeah, when you talk about like aliens being ahead of us and us needing to catch up, yes, that does really make sense because, like, who's just going to lag back in technology for the sake of it? We should also be prepared for peace, of course. Hopefully they're prepared for peace too.
But look, if they wanted to attack us, they would have. Is my
good point.
My opinion on this. Like, if they have the means to do it and they're not, then it may be that we're so insignificant in their overall register of like things they care about that we're just here, right?
Yeah. Or they are prepared for peace.
Yeah, or they just want peace, right? Yeah, that they don't want war at all. We just need to be able to understand if they are communicating with us, what it is that's being said. And that's where advances in space technology in particular are very important because that's how you would collect that kind of information from the reaches of outer space, is to understand if we're being attacked or if we're just being hailed, if we're just being communicated with. And that's super important.
The truth is out there.
Yeah.
And with hope, patience, and planning, our future will be out there too.
Yeah.
Mondays with Mike.